We are off. Welcome everyone to the sixth session for the Prodigal God, Thursday morning theology with James. We are back after a week away, and this week we are looking at chapter 6. As I turn back to that myself, redefining hope. And Dr. Keller starts off, it is important to read Jesus' parable of the lost son in the context of the whole of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15 as well, but the story has an even larger context. If we read the narrative in light of the Bible's sweeping theme of exile and homecoming, we will understand that Jesus has given us more than a moving account of individual redemption. He has retold the story of the whole human race and promised nothing less than hope for the world. And so that'll just get us kicked off here. Carol,
Yes,
you're the highlighting queen.
She's still highlighting.
She's still highlighting.
Yeah, because I missed something that I want to point out.
So get us started, get us talking.
Yeah, it's all really good, but the first thing I highlighted was on page 103, well, beyond page 101, 103, that first full paragraph. Home, then, is a powerful but elusive concept. The strong feelings that surround it reveal some deep longing within us for a place that absolutely fits and suits us, where we can be or perhaps find our true selves. Yet it seems that no real place or actual family ever satisfies these yearnings, though many situations arouse them.
Okay, all right. And he goes on into literature with John Knowles and John Steinbeck's
East of Eden.
That's right. I like that quote from Steinbeck: to climb into the mountains of Central California, their warm foothills, almost as you want to climb into the lap of a beloved mother. This longing for home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yes,
on
go
the
ahead.
page before,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
highlighted home exercises a powerful influence over human life.
It does.
You know, and what he says there about being in foreign places and yearning for home, that is so very true. My theme song while I was in Spain was "Take Me Home, Country Road."
They sing it at every home game for West Virginia football.
I bet, but
They do.
it does influence,
Yeah,
great influence on
it
me.
does. That's a beautiful song.
Mhm.
Yeah, all right. Yes, ma'am.
A little bit off the subject on 104, he's trying to define the word, and he says the German word that gets at this concept.
Yeah.
I cannot pronounce that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Where's Hoyt when you need him?
Yes.
And really, except for actually, there is an English word which derives from the Welsh, hyrith, which actually comes to that also
Okay.
a deep longing for something, especially one's home.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And
So yes, it is in English to nanny. Oh,
I think that's why Thanksgiving and Christmas mean so much to families, because
yes.
even if they're a mile away from each other during the year, everybody tries to make it to be together at Thanksgiving and Christmas.
think about
Come home.
last year here. What did we have?
Homecoming.
Homecoming.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, here they are.
Yeah.
It's that longing for home. C.S. Lewis's sermon, The Weight of Glory, speaks of that spiritual homesickness. And there's a great quote here from that, and I won't take the time to read. Basically says that everything that we find beauty in, if there's nothing wrong with it, most of things we find true beauty in, there's nothing wrong with them, but they end up proving false. They end up proving, I won't say false, but they end up proving a shadow of. They're signposts to something else, our real home. Right. So, anything in that particular section there? I know
In 105, I
Yeah.
highlighted, it was not in them, it only came through them. Meaning,
Right.
like you just said, we find that the things that we long for, just make an example, an apple pie that mom made. It's not just the apple,
Right.
it's not the apple pie, it's that feeling of, it's mom's apple pie, it's family, it's.
Yeah, it's home, right?
And too, it's memory, because
Yeah.
I've gone back to like my granddaddy's house and our just
Mhm.
past places and totally disappointed.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Because it's
Yes.
not what I
Same.
remember, so it's
Right.
better to keep the
Yeah.
memory of.
At the top of 104, the very first thing, it says, "The memory of home seems to be powerfully evoked by
Mhm.
certain sights, sounds, and even smells,
Yeah.
but they can only arouse a desire they can't fulfill." True.
Yeah.
When Mel and I got married, we lived in Snell, in 2 or 3 different locations. But it wasn't until I built my house on my grandmother's property that I actually felt like I was at home.
Oh, wow, yeah,
Mhm.
that's it,
Well, being in the military
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
and going home was huge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Such a huge thing.
Mhm.
But then when you got back to your home, you're like, "Phew, I'm so glad to be home." I mean,
Mhm.
it's a comfort thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, my dad wasn't in the military, but we moved around a lot. We were never any place more than a year and a half, basically, until I went to Spain. But we always maintained the house in Miami. And coming home felt so good. We were in South America, or we were in Jamaica, or Puerto Rico, or
Yep.
Baltimore, or
No
wherever
place
we
like
were.
home.
Coming
Click.
home was,
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
3 times.
yeah. Now I go back and see it, and like Peggy said, it's not what I remember.
No, that's right.
It's the memories, I think, that
It's a
you.
bunch of condos and things like
Oh,
that.
well, mine's
Where I
still a
grew up.
house, but it's, yeah, can change.
That's right. Yeah, that's good. Page 107, Dr. Keller says, in the beginning of the book of Genesis, that's a nice sentence, in the beginning of the book of Genesis, we learn the reason why all people feel like exiles, like we aren't really home. And we're told that we were created to live in the garden of God. That was the world we were built for, a place in which there was no parting from love, no decay or disease. It was all these things because it was life before the face of God in his presence. There we were to adore and serve his infinite majesty, and to know, enjoy, and reflect his infinite beauty. That was our original home, the true country we were made for. However, God was the father of that home, and we chafed under his authority. We wanted to live without God's interference, so we turned away. Became alienated from him and lost our home. Now we had some help, but ultimately the decision was ours. There was nothing to say that he couldn't say, no, that doesn't sound right, She didn't. So the result, of course, was exile. And now when you go back through the Bible, and as Carol and I are fast approaching the end of another year of the McShane, I think I finally learned how to say that, Bible reading plan, we're of course in the throes of 2 Kings right now. And it's not good news. Assyria has already come in and carted Israel off. And it's just a matter of time before Judah is carted off by Babylon into exile. But we see this theme of exile going all the way back to the garden. You can follow it through the narrative of Joseph, who was exiled. And then, of course, his brothers were exiled down to Egypt. And you see it over and over and over again in the Bible, this theme of exile. So it's important for us to know that that's what we're living in today as well, is this feeling of exile. One of the things the Jewish people, they don't believe the Babylonian exile has ended yet. They're still, they're waiting on the Messiah. They're not, the 1948 whatever over there. That didn't solve much of anything for them. They still feel exile of people without a home. So they're waiting on Messiah. So the good news is we believe Messiah has come and he is calling us home. So keep going, keep going. What else we got here? It's a great chapter.
Well, the bottom there of 109, it is no coincidence that story after story contains a pattern of exile. The message of the Bible is that the human race is a band of exiles trying to come home. The Tale of the Prodigal Son is about every one of us.
Yes. Because both brothers are exiled.
Yeah.
The older brother has exiled himself.
Mhm.
Well, so did the younger.
Mhm.
So did the younger. But they've exiled themselves from the father in different ways. Neither one of them is home. I mean, that's one of the things that he was talking about. Now, on top of 110, I don't read much poetry. I wish I read more. But I love Robert Frost. And I think the only reason I have become enamored with Robert Frost is because I got to him through choral arrangements of some of his poems. And so I sang them. The Road Not Taken, Choose Something Like a Star, The Pasture, The Telephone. I mean, these are all just really wonderful. The Young Girl in Her Garden. Just wonderful things. But he says at the top of 110,
Yeah.
home is where you have to go there, then they have to take you in. When you have to go there, they have to take you in, right? And
Yep.
That's a fantastic poem.
it is definitely. The younger brother, however, knows that a successful return is not inevitable, and the reason for that is his sins have created a barrier. He doesn't know how that wall can be breached. He knows he might be rejected and forced to stay in exile. And then the Bible also shows us how high the barriers are for our own homecoming as a human race. And then he gets into some of the history that the only a minority of the Jews actually returned to Palestine. And there they continue to be under the domination of Persia. So it wasn't like, they went home and were free. It just wasn't that way. They were still under the ruling empire. And then after Persia, welcome Greece, welcome Syria, and welcome Rome. So there's still oppression. So they're still longing for that full and final homecoming, he says. Why? He says on 111, he says it was the brokenness within human beings. More than their outer circumstances, it was what was within them.
Well, he said the second reason's brokenness around us.
Yeah, it is.
What the world's got going on.
Yeah.
And up above that, the human race in general was mired in selfishness, pride, and sin.
We have our issues in our own hearts. I try to be more cognizant every day of people who maybe have stepped out of domestic wreckage, maybe are having battle with themselves in their own, because that's bad enough. Never mind the conflicts that we may have with one another or whatever, but just that inner conflict can be so intense. It's important. He says at 111, we need a radical change in our very nature. And so,
Can do that.
yeah, so let's move on. Let's see, I'm on page 112. We realize that this world is beautiful as it is. As beautiful as it is, and it really is a beautiful world. As Louis Armstrong once sang, what a wonderful, wonderful world. It is not the home we long for. Not in the state it's in right now. There's going to have to be a radical change, not only in us, but also in the world. And Paul talks about this.
Sorry.
And your phone talks about this.
It's a good ringtone. Good
Well, if you
ringtone.
switch to Apple, everything
Yeah, I
would be
like
better.
Yeah, well, I probably, but anyway, that's not, like he's gonna do some work.
See, we take breaks. For those of you that may be tuning in for the first time, we just take breaks in the middle of the discussion and then just keep going. Aren't you glad you tuned in? All right, so here we go. Paul talks about it in Romans, that the creation groans for the redemption of human beings. That will trigger its own redemption. It will all be made new. And we read about that a little bit later in Revelation, but the creation itself groans.
Yes.
And it will be changed as surely as we will. And let's see. Carol, you got anything on these 2 pages?
Yeah, actually,
What you got?
all of that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Of course.
That's a lot.
Beginning with the first full paragraph there, it's what, 5 lines up or something. It was thought that the Messiah, the King who would redeem Israel, would be a figure of great military strength and political power. He would come to his people, be recognized and received by them, and then lead them on to victory. Then Jesus appeared and declared that he was bringing in the kingdom of God. Actually, that whole page 113, I thought was just wonderful, so, or had some really good information.
Of that, I think, but nothing about him fit their expectations.
Nope.
Right.
But he joined them as one in exile. We say the one in
Yes.
exile.
Everything about him was in exile.
Everything was exile.
Yeah.
Boxes have holes. We want to see where you stay. Come and see. I don't know where I'm gonna stay
Yeah.
tonight. Boxes have holes, birds have nests, but I don't know where I'll lay my head down. And then in my translation, it says, and I'm not particularly worried about it. God will provide me somewhere to rest my head. And he was just not, he remained completely outside the social networks of political and economic power. He did not even seek academic or religious credentials. Finally, at the end of his life, he was crucified outside the gate of the city, a powerful symbol of rejection by the community of exile. And, even worse, as he died and said, my God, why have you forsaken me? A tremendous cry of spiritual dereliction and homesickness. Even God, in that moment on the cross, felt exiled. Wow.
And it said what had happened, Jesus had not come to simply deliver one nation from political oppression, but to save all of us from sin, evil, and death itself.
Indeed.
You're going back to the.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
My God, why have you forsaken me? I think that's one reason why we can more relate to God, because he, in Jesus, felt that separateness, not because of what he did, but he took on all of what we did, but that whole, it hurts your heart to think of everything that he took on for us. And he felt that God had forgotten him, so the fact that people get to a point of hopelessness is relatable to God, because he felt it.
That's right. That's right. That's why I buck against the idea that God turned, so some people think that God left Jesus
No.
on the cross, and then what we're hearing is the cry of the human. And the reason they say that God left, that the folks who adhere to this say, is that God cannot look on sin. This idea that Jesus bearing the weight of sin on the cross. Well, if that's not God on that cross, then what I have, and that just brings Trinity into this, and it causes everything to go, okay, wait a minute, what? I get it, it's mysterious. There's no easy book on it, but the fact of the matter is that indeed, that it is in God the Son, without division. I don't understand it, but without division, God was on that cross, and yet on that cross, God felt forsaken from the communion and the fellowship in which God exists in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I don't understand how all of that works, but I can't go there. That it was just the human being, Jesus of Nazareth.
As a rescue squad person,
Yes,
I've
ma'am.
got to say that from the start, when I heard that explanation, I went, no. You can be in so much pain, you cannot feel anything around you.
That's right. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good thing. It is. Okay, but that's not the end of the story.
Nope.
Okay. We have the feast at the end of history, right? Jesus not only died, page 114, but rose from the grave on the third day. He broke the power of death. But God raised him from the dead, freeing him from the agony of death because it was impossible for death to keep its hold on him. Because Jesus paid the penalty for our sin with his death, he has achieved victory over the forces of death, decay, and disorder that keep the world from being our true home. Someday, he will return to make this victory complete. And Isaiah writes, and then you have the quote from Isaiah 35. And this language here is echoed in Revelation quite a bit. All right. So keep us going here.
At the end of the story, the prodigal son, at the end of the story of the prodigal sons, there is a feast of homecoming. So too, at the end of the book of Revelation, at the end of history, there is a feast, the marriage supper of the Lamb.
Yeah. The Lamb is Jesus, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? He was sacrificed for the sins of the world so that we could be pardoned and brought home. And the interesting thing is, this happens in the New Jerusalem, the city of God that comes down out of heaven to fill the earth. We're told that the very presence of God is in this city. And interestingly, the tree of life. Remember that? That was in the Garden of Eden. And after they partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the Lord was concerned in their fallen state. That's a caveat to remember there. Why would it have been bad for Adam and Eve to partake of the tree of life? God didn't tell them not to eat of the tree of life. He told them, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But because they have partaken of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in their fallen state, it would not be good for them to live forever in this state of brokenness. And so he banished them from the garden. Well, guess what? It's back in the New Jerusalem, the tree of life. And it's interesting here, where the tree, the leaves of the tree brings the healing of the nation.
That's great.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And we got some nations that need some healing, don't we?
Oh, indeed.
A whole bunch.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
I was going to.
right you are. Right you are. The whole earth has become the garden of God again, but it's a garden city. There's an element of the city now. Death and decay and suffering, they're gone. The nations are no longer at war. Revelation 21:4, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. So, and I like what he says here. Our future is not an ethereal, impersonal form of consciousness. We will not float through the air, but rather we will eat, embrace. See all these tangible things? Eat, embrace, sing, laugh, and dance in the kingdom of God in degrees of power, glory, and joy we can't at present imagine. Yep, it's going to be perfect. And we will no longer be living east of Eden, always wandering and never arriving. We will come, the Father will meet us and embrace us, and we will be brought into the feast.
I like that sentence.
Go ahead, please.
First one, Jesus will make the world our perfect home again.
That's right.
What a great
It'll be a beautiful
chapter.
place. Some might call it heaven.
Yeah.
On earth.
Yeah, right.
That's
All
what
right, so
Revelation says.
is there anything else we want to talk about today? Everybody okay?
That's good. Whenever that,
Go ahead,
that
Sharon,
last
please.
sentence that says that we can't at present imagine, I think the song that came into my mind, I can only imagine.
Yeah. Must be something.
Because we
must be
really
something.
can't imagine it, but
Yeah. And just how, you see the world and how beautiful it is. It's hard to, it's got some spots that are not so beautiful, but it just, wow.
Mhm.
To imagine something even better than that without spoil, without, it's pretty amazing. So, Lord willing, next Thursday, folks, we'll close it out and close our time out on Thursday mornings for this year. I thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for those that'll view this on Zoom. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
What's the cost